The cantina on Nexus Station buzzed with activity like it did every night. Traders from dozens of worlds sat at round tables, drinking exotic liquors and sharing stories. The air smelled of ozone and spices from 100 different planets. Blue smoke drifted from the ceiling fans, and the lights dimmed and brightened in patterns that no human eye could follow. At the center of it all sat Crixtal, the most famous bounty hunter in 3 sectors. His chitinous shell gleamed under the lights, covered in scars that told stories of battles across the galaxy. Each mark was a trophy, each dent a victory over some deadly creature from the worst worlds imaginable. Crixtal held court like a king. His forearms gestured wildly as he spoke, his mandibles clicking with excitement. Around him sat creatures from 20 different species, all hanging on his every word. They bought him drinks and asked questions about his adventures. The Ice Wolves of Hoth Prime, Crixtal said, his voice carrying across the cantina, stood 3 meters tall at the shoulder. Their breath could freeze blood in your veins. Their claws could cut through battle armor like paper. He touched a jagged scar on his left arm. This one gave me quite a fight, but in the end they all fall to superior skill. A Vorthak trader leaned forward, his 6 eyes wide with interest. How many did you kill? The entire pack, Crixtal replied proudly. 17 adults, 5 juveniles. I kept their leader's skull as proof. He pointed to a white wolf-like skull mounted on his shoulder armor. The crowd murmured in appreciation. Someone ordered another round of drinks. Crixtal accepted them graciously and continued his tale. But that was nothing compared to the acid spitters of Venox, he said. Those creatures could dissolve steel with their saliva. Their hides were thick as starship hull plating. The colony there offered me 10,000 credits for each one I killed. A young Zalathi female looked impressed. How did you hunt them? Crixtal's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his kind. Patience and superior technology. I tracked them for 3 days through the sulfur swamps. When I found their nesting ground, I used plasma charges to collapse their tunnels. Then I picked them off one by one as they tried to escape. He showed off another trophy, a curved fang as long as a human forearm. This belonged to their queen. She was the size of a small transport ship. It took 6 shots from my heavy rifle to bring her down. The stories continued for another hour. Crixtal spoke of shadow stalkers that could turn invisible, of rock beasts that could survive in the vacuum of space, of flame lizards that lived in active volcanoes. Each tale was more incredible than the last, and each one ended the same way, with Crixtal victorious and his prey dead. In the corner of the cantina, at a small table by herself, sat a human woman. She was small by galactic standards, maybe 5.5 feet tall, with brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Her clothes were plain, a gray diplomatic uniform with the Earth Federation symbol on the shoulder. She looked young, maybe in her early 30s, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Lisa Kane had been listening to the stories for over an hour. She sipped her drink slowly, a simple fruit juice from her homeworld. Occasionally she would nod or raise her eyebrows at particularly dramatic moments in Crixtal's tales. She seemed fascinated by the bounty hunter's adventures. Crixtal noticed her attention during his story about the crystal spiders of Arcturus. He saw her watching him with those soft brown eyes, and his ego swelled even more. A human admirer, how exotic. He had heard that humans were a new species, recently discovered and eager to learn about the galaxy. When he finished his current story, Crixtal stood and walked over to Lisa's table. His footsteps were heavy, his armor clanking with each step. The other patrons watched with interest as the famous hunter approached the small human. Mind if I join you? Crixtal asked, though he was already pulling out a chair. His translator rendered his clicking speech into standard galactic. Lisa looked up and smiled warmly. Of course. I've been enjoying your stories. They're quite remarkable. Crixtal settled into the chair, which creaked under his weight. Up close, Lisa could see the details of his trophy collection. Teeth, claws, scales, and stranger things hung from his armor like ornaments. Some still had dried blood on them. You're from Earth, aren't you? Crixtal asked, noting her uniform. I've heard about your world. Recently discovered, still adapting to galactic society. That's right, Lisa said. I'm a diplomatic attaché. Lisa Kane. We're still learning about all the wonderful diversity in the galaxy. Crixtal preened at the compliment. Well, you've certainly found the right person to teach you. I've been to more deathworlds than any other hunter alive. I've faced creatures that would give seasoned warriors nightmares. Lisa leaned forward with apparent interest. Tell me about your most recent hunt. What was it like? Krikstal's eyes lit up. Fresh audience was always welcome, especially one so attentive. That would be Raker 7. A frozen wasteland where the apex predators are crystalline wolves. They hunt in packs and their howls can shatter steel. The colonists there were losing dozens of people every month. Lisa nodded, encouraging him to continue. I tracked them for a week through blizzards that could blind you in seconds. The cold was so intense it would freeze most species solid in minutes. But I persevered. I found their den in a glacier cave system deep underground. That sounds incredibly dangerous, Lisa said. It was. Krikstal agreed proudly. These weren't ordinary predators. They were intelligent, cunning. They set traps and worked together like a military unit. But I had superior weapons and tactics. Lisa's expression remained interested and innocent. What happened when you found them? I used sonic charges to bring down parts of the cave system, separating the pack. Then I hunted them one by one. The alpha male was the size of a ground vehicle. His crystal hide reflected energy weapons, so I had to use kinetic rounds. It took 40 shots to bring him down. Lisa was quiet for a moment, processing the story. Then she asked, with the same gentle tone she had used throughout the conversation, "These crystalline wolves sound magnificent. They were intelligent, you said? They had families, pack bonds?" "Yes, quite sophisticated for animals," Krikstal replied. Lisa nodded slowly, then looked directly into his compound eyes. Her voice remained soft and curious, but there was something different in her expression now. Something that Krikstal, caught up in his own ego, completely missed. "Did any of them survive you?" Krikstal threw back his head and laughed, a sound like grinding metal that made several nearby patrons wince. The question struck him as absurd, showing just how little this naive human understood about the nature of hunting. "Survive," he repeated, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "Little human, you clearly don't understand what I do. I am Krikstal the Relentless. I am the apex predator of apex predators. Nothing survives when I hunt. That's the entire point." Lisa tilted her head slightly, like a curious child trying to understand a difficult concept. "I see, so you kill everything you hunt? Even the young ones? Even those who might try to surrender?" The laughter died in Krikstal's throat. Around them, conversations at other tables began to quiet. Other patrons started paying attention to their discussion, something in the human's tone catching their notice in ways that Krikstal missed entirely. "Surrender?" Krikstal's voice carried a note of irritation now. "Animals don't surrender, human. They're not civilized beings. They're predators, killers. The colonists on these worlds are in danger. I eliminate that danger completely." Lisa nodded thoughtfully, taking another sip of her fruit juice. "Of course. You're protecting people. That's very noble. But I'm curious about your methods. When you found those crystalline wolves in their den, were there pups with them?" Krikstal's compound eyes narrowed. He wasn't used to being questioned about his techniques, especially not by someone who clearly knew nothing about hunting dangerous prey. "There were juveniles, yes. What's your point? And you killed them too?" "Naturally. Juveniles grow into adults. Adults pose threats. It's basic logic." Lisa's expression remained pleasant, but she continued asking questions in that same gentle, curious tone. "How old were the juveniles? Were they old enough to hunt on their own?" "I don't conduct biological surveys," Krikstal snapped. "Young predators become old predators. The threat must be eliminated completely." A Dravian merchant at a nearby table shifted uncomfortably. His species had strong family bonds, and the conversation was making him uneasy. He glanced at his companions, but they were all listening now too. Lisa seemed unaware of the growing tension. "I understand the logic," she said. "But didn't you say these wolves were intelligent? If they were smart enough to set traps and work as a military unit, wouldn't they also be smart enough to understand consequences? To learn?" Krikstal's patience was wearing thin. This human was questioning his methods with the persistence of someone who had never faced a real predator. Intelligence in animals is limited. They understand pack tactics, but they don't understand civilization, law, or peaceful coexistence. They understand only strength and dominance. "Is that what you understand too?" Lisa asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Krikstal's four hands clenched into fists. Several other patrons had stopped their own conversations entirely now, sensing that something significant was happening. "What exactly are you implying?" Krikstal demanded. Lisa's smile never wavered. I'm not implying anything. I'm just trying to understand your philosophy. You said the hunt is about dominance, that the weak perish and the strong survive, that it's the natural order. It is the natural order. But you use advanced weapons, technology, tactics. Is that really natural? Or is it just using superior tools to eliminate creatures that can't fight back on equal terms? Crixtal stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. His armor clinked as he loomed over the small human woman. You dare question my honor? My methods? I've saved more lives than you can count, little diplomat. I've faced creatures that would tear you apart without thinking twice. Lisa looked up at him calmly, showing no fear despite the fact that the angry bounty hunter could have snapped her neck with one hand. I'm sure you have, and I'm sure those creatures had their own families, their own territories they were defending, their own reasons for fighting. They were animals. Were they? Lisa's voice remained soft, but there was something new in it now. Something that made the Dravian merchant push back from his table, and the Vorthak trader near the bar suddenly find his drink very interesting. Or were they just different from you? Crixtal's mandibles spread wide in a threat display. You know nothing about predators, human. You come from a safe little world where the most dangerous thing you face is probably bad weather. You have no concept of what real predators are capable of. Lisa was quiet for a long moment, studying the angry hunter with those calm brown eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but somehow everyone in their section of the cantina could hear it clearly. You're right, she said. I probably don't understand predators the way you do. Where I come from, we have a very different relationship with hunting, a different philosophy about what it means to be strong. Crixtal sensed victory in her admission. His posture relaxed slightly. Exactly. Your species is new to the galaxy. You haven't learned yet how dangerous the universe really is. Lisa stood up slowly, placing her hands flat on the table. She was so much smaller than Crixtal that she barely came up to his chest. That's true. We're very new to galactic society. Most species out here don't know much about Earth yet. She paused, tilting her head again with that curious expression. Tell me, Crixtal, have you ever been hunted yourself? Have you ever been the prey instead of the predator? The question caught him off guard. What kind of question is that? An honest one. You talk about dominance and strength, about the natural order. But the natural order goes both ways, doesn't it? Sometimes the hunter becomes the hunted. Crixtal laughed again, but it sounded forced now. Nothing hunts me, human. I'm at the top of the food chain. Lisa smiled that same gentle smile, but somehow it looked different now. How interesting. You know, where I come from, we learned a long time ago that there's always something higher on the food chain. Always something stronger, faster, or smarter. She picked up her glass and finished the last of her fruit juice. We also learned that the most dangerous predators are often the ones that don't look dangerous at all. With that, she placed some credits on the table to pay for her drink. Thank you for the conversation, Crixtal. Your stories were very educational. I hope you have a pleasant evening. Lisa Kane walked away toward the cantina exit, her footsteps silent on the metal floor. Crixtal watched her go, confused by the entire interaction. Around him, other patrons slowly returned to their own conversations, but the atmosphere had changed. The easy camaraderie was gone, replaced by something tense and uncertain. The Dravian merchant gathered his belongings and left quickly. The Vorthak trader finished his drink in one gulp and headed for the door. Within minutes, half the cantina had cleared out. Crixtal stood alone at Lisa's abandoned table, staring at the credits she had left behind. For the first time in years, he felt unsettled by a conversation. There had been something in the human's voice, something in her eyes during those final moments, something that reminded him, just for a second, of how his prey looked right before they realized they were being hunted. The alarm klaxons screamed through Nexus Station at 0300 hours, jolting Security Chief Vorth from his sleep. The massive Ergani rolled out of his bed, his thick hide already shifting to its alert coloration. Emergency calls like this were rare on the station. Nexus was neutral territory, carefully policed and generally peaceful. Vorth's communicator crackled to life. Chief, you need to get to level 7 immediately. We have a situation in the residential quarter. What kind of situation? Vorth growled, pulling on his uniform. It's difficult to explain, sir. You need to see it for yourself. 10 minutes later, Vorth stood outside Crixtal's quarters, staring at a scene that made no sense. The door hung off its hinges. Twisted metal warped outward as if something incredibly strong had torn it apart from the inside. But the damage pattern was wrong. Whatever had done this hadn't used tools or weapons. Inside the room, the destruction was total but strange. Furniture lay scattered across the floor, but not randomly. Everything had been moved with purpose, arranged to create barriers and hiding spots. The walls bore deep gouges, parallel scratches that looked like claw marks, but they were too large, too precisely spaced to have been made by any known species. In the center of the chaos sat Krixtal himself. The famous bounty hunter was curled in the corner, his massive frame folded into a ball like a frightened child. His eyes stared at nothing, pupils dilated with shock. His mandibles trembled constantly and a low keening sound escaped his throat. When security officers tried to approach him, he flinched away and made high-pitched clicking noises. "Has he said anything?" Forth asked his second-in-command, Lieutenant Zara. "Nothing coherent. He keeps repeating something about the hunt and she knows. We can't get him to respond to direct questions." Forth walked carefully through the wreckage, his trained eye cataloging the damage. The trophy collection that Krixtal was so proud of lay scattered across the floor. Skulls were cracked, claws snapped in half, scales torn from their mountings. But again, the destruction seemed purposeful, not random. "Time frame?" Forth asked. The alarms went off at 0247. Security footage shows Krixtal entering his quarters at 23:15 last night. No one else entered or left until we arrived. Forth frowned. "So whatever happened inside a locked room?" "That's what it looks like, sir." The security chief knelt beside one of the claw marks on the wall. The gouges were deep, cutting through both the metal plating and the structural beam beneath. Whatever had made these marks possessed incredible strength. But the pattern was wrong. These weren't the marks of an animal or alien creature. They were too controlled, too deliberate. "Sir," Lieutenant Zara called from across the room, "you need to see this." She led him to the entertainment center where Krixtal's personal computer terminal was still active. The screen displayed security footage from the cantina, showing Krixtal's conversation with the human diplomat from the night before. "Pull up the station logs," Forth ordered. "I want to know everything about this human." The data came up quickly. Lisa Kane, diplomatic attaché from Earth assigned to the Federation Embassy. Clean record, standard credentials, unremarkable background. But as Vorth read further, one detail caught his attention. "Earth," he muttered. "What classification is their homeworld?" Lieutenant Zara worked the console. "Let me check the survey data." "That's odd. What?" "The classification keeps changing. First survey labeled it Class 9 Deathworld. Second survey upgraded it to Class XC. The most recent assessment..." She paused, reading carefully. "Class Ukin, with a note that the scale may need to be extended." Vorth felt a chill run down his spine. Class 13 Deathworlds were theoretical. Nothing was supposed to be able to evolve complex intelligence on worlds that hostile. "Get me the human doctor. Nathan Price, wake him up if you have to." Dr. Nathan Price arrived 20 minutes later, looking rumpled but alert. He was a thin man with graying hair and kind eyes, much like the diplomat who had spoken with Krixtal. When he saw the condition of the room and the catatonic bounty hunter, he whistled softly. "What happened here?" he asked. "That's what we're trying to figure out," Forth replied. "Your colleague, Lisa Kane, was the last person to speak with Krixtal before this happened. We need to understand something about your species." Nathan knelt beside Krixtal and began a basic medical examination. The bounty hunter didn't resist, but he didn't respond either. His vital signs were stable but elevated, consistent with extreme stress and shock. "What do you want to know?" Nathan asked while working. "Your homeworld. The classification keeps changing in our databases. What exactly did you evolve from?" Nathan was quiet for a moment, his hands gentle as he checked Krixtal's reflexes. "Earth is complicated. We're still figuring out how to explain it to other species." "Try." "Well, imagine a world where the weather can kill you in dozens of different ways, where the apex predators learned to use tools to cooperate, to plan ahead, where survival required not just strength or speed, but intelligence and adaptability." Forth watched as Nathan worked. "You're saying humans are apex predators?" It's complicated." Nathan sat back on his heels. "Chief, what most species don't understand about Earth is that it didn't just produce one apex predator. It produced thousands of them, all competing with each other. Humans survived not because we were the strongest or fastest, but because we were the most persistent." "Persistent?" "We're endurance hunters, Chief. Our ancestors would chase prey for days, weeks if necessary. We don't give up, ever. It's how we survived ice ages, plagues, wars with each other. We just Keep going until the threat is eliminated or we are. Nathan stood and looked around the destroyed room. But here's the thing about humans that other species struggle with. We also learned mercy. We learned when not to kill, because on a world as dangerous as Earth, sometimes the predator you spare today becomes the ally you need tomorrow. Fourth felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. And if someone doesn't understand mercy, if they hunt for sport instead of survival, Nathan's expression grew serious. Then they might find themselves being educated about the difference. The security chief looked at the claw marks on the walls, at the purposefully arranged furniture, at the broken trophies scattered across the floor. You're saying one of your diplomats did this? I'm saying that Lisa Kane grew up on a world where everything was trying to kill her, where her ancestors survived by being better hunters than things that could tear apart starships. But she also grew up learning that true strength isn't about domination. Nathan gestured to Krikstal, still curled in his corner. He's not injured, is he? No permanent damage? Vorth checked his medical scanner. Physically, he's fine. Psychologically, no, he'll recover. Humans are good at teaching lessons without causing permanent harm. It's one of the things we learned from being both predator and prey. As if responding to their conversation, Krikstal suddenly spoke for the first time since being found. His voice was barely a whisper, but in the quiet room everyone could hear him clearly. She asked if any of them survived me. She already knew the answer. She already knew what I was. Nathan nodded sadly. And now you know what she is. Vorth looked between the human doctor and the traumatized bounty hunter. What exactly is she? Nathan gathered his medical equipment and prepared to leave. At the door, he paused and looked back at the security chief. She's someone who learned a long time ago that the most dangerous predators are the ones that choose not to kill you. Security Chief Vorth spent the next 4 hours reviewing every piece of footage and testimony he could find. The story that emerged was impossible, but the evidence was undeniable. In 37 minutes, Lisa Kane had reduced the galaxy's most feared bounty hunter to a trembling wreck, without causing any permanent physical harm. The security footage told part of the story, but large sections were missing or corrupted. The station's internal sensors had malfunctioned in Krikstal's section during the critical time period. What remained painted a picture that challenged everything Vorth thought he knew about humans. At 23:47 hours, cameras caught Lisa Kane walking down the corridor toward Krikstal's quarters. Her pace was unhurried, her expression calm. She carried nothing but a small diplomatic pouch. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, a harmless bureaucrat heading back to her own room after a drink in the cantina. At 23:51 hours, she knocked on Krikstal's door. The audio pickup caught their brief conversation. Krikstal answered the door with obvious surprise but clear pleasure. He invited her in eagerly, apparently flattered that the human diplomat wanted to see his trophy collection. I was hoping you might show me some of your prizes, Lisa's voice said through the speakers. Your stories were so fascinating. I'd love to learn more about your hunting techniques. Krikstal's response was enthusiastic. Of course. Come in. I have specimens from 12 different deathworlds. Each one tells a story of survival and skill. The door closed behind them. From that point until 0024 hours, the security system recorded nothing but silence from the room. Vorth interviewed the neighbors, but their accounts only deepened the mystery. Mrs. Kalara, an elderly Zenthan who lived next door, heard normal conversation for the first few minutes. Krikstal was explaining his collection, describing each trophy with obvious pride. Then it got quiet, she told Vorth. Not silent, just different. Like when you're listening for something specific. Did you hear any sounds of struggle? Fighting? No fighting. But after a while, I heard the big one moving around. His footsteps, but faster than usual. Like he was looking for something. Her next-door neighbor on the other side, a young Dravian named Tuck, had a more disturbing account. I heard the hunter talking to himself. He sounded nervous. He kept saying things like, "Where are you?" and "Come out and this isn't funny." For how long? Maybe 20 minutes. Then he started making those clicking sounds his kind make when they're scared. After that, nothing until the alarms went off. The most revealing testimony came from Lieutenant Jex, who had been on patrol in the corridor during the incident. His report was filed at 0100 hours, before anyone realized what had happened in Krikstal's quarters. I was doing my regular rounds when I noticed the lights flickering in Section 7. Standard maintenance issue. so I didn't think much of it. But then I heard something strange. What kind of something? Breathing. Heavy breathing in the ventilation system. Like someone running, but the sound was coming from the ducts above my head. Vorth pulled up the station's environmental controls. During the critical time period, someone had accessed the ventilation system through a maintenance panel in the corridor. The same someone had also interfaced with the lighting controls, the security sensors, and the air circulation system. The technical logs showed a level of skill that impressed even Vorth. Whoever had done this understood the station's systems better than most of his own security team. They had moved through the infrastructure like they owned it, appearing and disappearing at will. But the most disturbing evidence came from the room itself. Forensic analysis revealed that the furniture had been moved multiple times during the incident. First, it had been arranged to create clear lines of sight, giving someone a tactical advantage. Then it had been rearranged to create hiding spots and obstacles. Finally, it had been positioned to force movement through specific areas. The claw marks on the walls told their own story. They appeared in clusters throughout the room, always at strategic points. Near the door, where someone might try to escape. Around the windows, blocking that exit route. By the communication panel, preventing calls for help. But the marks weren't random. Analysis showed they had been made deliberately, precisely. Someone with intimate knowledge of anatomy had placed each mark to create maximum psychological impact without causing serious injury. It's like she was hurting him, Lieutenant Zara observed, studying the forensic data, moving him exactly where she wanted him to go. The breakthrough came when Vorth reviewed the environmental data more carefully. The air circulation system had recorded something unusual during the incident, a change in atmospheric composition in Krikstal's quarters. Pheromones, Dr. Nathan Price explained when Vorth called him back. Humans release specific chemical signals when hunting. It's an evolutionary response designed to trigger fear in prey animals. Are you saying this Lisa Kane marked Krikstal like an animal? I'm saying that humans evolved alongside creatures that could smell fear, smell aggression, smell intent. We learned to use those same signals as weapons. Nathan pulled up a biological chart on his tablet. When a human is hunting, really hunting, not just playing or practicing, their body chemistry changes. Heart rate increases, adrenaline spikes, and specific hormones are released. Most galactic species can't detect these changes, but subconsciously they respond to them. How? Fight or flight response. The prey animal knows it's being hunted even if it can't see the predator. Vorth looked at the data again with new understanding. For 37 minutes, Krikstal had been trapped in a room with a predator that he couldn't see, couldn't catch, and couldn't escape. A predator that his own biology told him was hunting him. The final piece of evidence was the most chilling. At 00:23 hours, just 1 minute before the lights came back on permanently, the audio sensors picked up Lisa Kane's voice one last time. "Now you know what it feels like," she said calmly. "This is what every creature you've hunted experienced. The fear, the helplessness, the certainty that death is coming and there's nothing you can do to stop it." Krikstal's response was barely audible. "Please, I understand. Please don't. The difference," Lisa continued, "is that I'm going to let you live. Those families you destroyed, those young you killed, they didn't get that choice, but I'm giving it to you now." There was a long pause. When Lisa spoke again, her voice was closer to the audio pickup, as if she was standing right next to Krikstal. "The next time you hunt, remember this feeling. Remember that somewhere out there, there's always something higher on the food chain, something that might decide you're the one that needs to be stopped." At 00:24 hours, the lights came back on. At 00:25, Lisa Kane walked out of the room, leaving the door open behind her. Security footage showed her making her way calmly back to her own quarters, her breathing normal, her expression serene. At 02:47 hours, a maintenance worker doing routine checks discovered Krikstal, still huddled in the corner where Lisa had left him. Vorth closed the case file and looked out his office window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there was a species that had evolved on a world so dangerous it didn't fit the standard classification scale. A species that had learned to hunt by being hunted, to kill by being killed, to survive by adapting to anything the universe could throw at them. And they had decided to join galactic civilization. For the first time in his career, Security Chief Vorth wondered if the galaxy was ready for humanity. Lisa Kane sat in her diplomatic suite the next morning, calmly eating breakfast and reviewing trade agreements as if nothing unusual had happened. Her table was set with simple earth foods: coffee, toast with jam, and fresh fruit that had arrived on the last supply ship from home. Sunlight streamed through the large viewport, casting gentle patterns across her work papers. When Security Chief Vorth arrived at her door at 800 hours, she greeted him with the same warm smile she had worn in the cantina. "Chief Vorth, please come in. Would you like some coffee? It's a human beverage quite popular on Earth. I think you might enjoy it." Vorth entered cautiously, his massive frame filling the doorway. The suite was neat and orderly, with no signs of the violence that had occurred just hours earlier. Lisa moved gracefully around her small kitchen area, preparing a cup of the dark liquid. "I assume you're here about last night," she said conversationally, as if they were discussing the weather. "Miss Kane, I need to ask you some questions about your interaction with Crixtal." Lisa handed him the coffee cup, which looked tiny in his large hands. "Of course. Though I should mention that my diplomatic status provides certain protections under galactic law. This isn't about diplomatic immunity. This is about understanding what happened." Lisa returned to her breakfast, buttering a piece of toast with careful precision. "What would you like to know?" Vorth consulted his datapad, though he had memorized every detail of the case. "At 2351 last night, you visited Crixtal in his quarters. At U24 this morning, you left. 37 minutes later, we found him in a state of extreme psychological trauma. Can you explain what occurred during that time?" "Certainly. We had a philosophical discussion about the nature of hunting and survival. I found his perspective quite educational. The answer was so casual, so matter-of-fact, that Vorth almost doubted his own investigation. A philosophical discussion that left a hardened bounty hunter catatonic with fear?" Lisa paused in her eating and looked at Vorth with those same kind brown eyes that had fooled everyone in the cantina. "Chief Vorth, have you ever been hunted? Not chased or pursued, but truly hunted by something that wanted to kill you?" No. I'm security, not prey." "Everyone is prey to something," Lisa said gently. That's what Crixtal didn't understand. He saw hunting as a one-way relationship, predator and prey, hunter and victim. He never considered that the roles might reverse. Vorth set down his coffee cup. The liquid was bitter, but strangely appealing. "Are you admitting that you hunted him?" "I'm saying that I gave him a learning experience. Crixtal has spent years killing intelligent creatures for sport. He collected trophies from beings that had families, communities, complex social structures. He bragged about destroying entire species." Lisa's voice remained calm, but there was something underneath it now. Something that reminded Vorth of deep ocean currents, powerful forces moving beneath a peaceful surface. "From my species' perspective," she continued, "that makes him a very dangerous predator, one that needed to be educated about consequences. By terrorizing him. By teaching him empathy." Lisa finished her toast and wiped her hands carefully with a napkin. "Chief, what most galactic species don't understand about humans is that we evolved in an environment where everything was trying to kill us. But we also evolved intelligence, creativity, and most importantly, the ability to learn from our experiences." She stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. "Crixtal learned something important last night. He learned what it feels like to be helpless, to be hunted by something stronger and smarter than himself. He learned what every one of his victims experienced in their final moments." Vorth studied her profile against the starlight. "She looked so normal, so harmless. And you think that justifies what you did?" "I think it was necessary. You see, Chief, where I come from, we have a saying: the most dangerous predators are those that choose mercy. Crixtal will recover from his experience. His victims never got that chance." She turned back to face him, and for just a moment Vorth caught a glimpse of something in her eyes, something ancient and patient and utterly implacable. Humans are persistence hunters, Chief. When we mark something as a threat, we don't give up. We don't get tired. We don't forget. We will follow our prey across continents, across years, across star systems if necessary, but we also understand that sometimes the lesson is more important than the kill. Vorth felt a chill despite the warm atmosphere of the suite. "Are you threatening other hunters?" Lisa laughed, a sound as gentle as spring rain. "Not at all. I'm simply explaining human nature. We don't seek out conflict, but we respond to it decisively when it finds us. Crixtal chose to hunt intelligent beings for sport. He chose to collect trophies from creatures that could think and feel and love." She returned to her table and poured herself more coffee. In human terms, that made him a very specific type of threat. One that required a very specific type of response. And what type is that? Educational. Vorth reviewed his notes, trying to find some legal framework for what had occurred. Miss Kane, regardless of your motivations, you broke into a private residence, caused property damage, and psychologically traumatized a galactic citizen. Actually, I didn't break in. Crixtal invited me. The property damage was minimal and artistic in nature. As for psychological trauma, Lisa shrugged delicately. Sometimes healing requires discomfort. He's still catatonic. He's processing new information. Humans call it cognitive recalibration. He's learning to see the universe from a different perspective. As if summoned by their conversation, Vorth's communicator chimed. Lieutenant Zara's voice came through clearly. Chief, you need to know. Crixtal is conscious and talking. He's asking to speak with the human diplomat. Lisa smiled. See? He's already making progress. Vorth stood to leave but paused at the door. Miss Kane, one final question. Are there others like you among the human diplomatic corps? Lisa considered the question seriously. Chief, humans are remarkably diverse. Some of us are teachers, some are healers, some are builders. Some of us are diplomats who believe in peaceful solutions to complex problems. She met his gaze directly. And some of us are the children of a world where the apex predators learn to use tools to plan ahead, to show mercy when mercy is deserved, and swift justice when it is not. Which are you? Lisa's smile was warm and genuine and somehow completely terrifying. I'm a diplomat, Chief. I solve problems through communication and understanding. Last night I helped Crixtal understand some things he had forgotten. After Vorth left, Lisa returned to her trade agreements. An hour later, another knock came at her door. This time it was Crixtal himself, escorted by 2 security officers but walking under his own power. The bounty hunter looked smaller somehow, diminished. His trophy armor was gone, replaced by simple station clothes. When he saw Lisa, he didn't speak immediately. Instead, he stood in her doorway, studying her with new eyes. You wanted to see me? Lisa asked kindly. Crixtal nodded slowly. I wanted to apologize, and to ask you something. Please, sit down. He took a chair across from her, moving carefully as if he was afraid of making sudden movements. Those creatures I hunted, did they all feel what I felt last night? Lisa poured him a cup of coffee without being asked. What do you think? I think they were terrified. I think they knew they were going to die and there was nothing they could do about it. And how does that make you feel? Crixtal was quiet for a long moment. Sick, ashamed. I told myself they were just animals, but they weren't, were they? They were people. Different from us, but still people. Lisa nodded. The crystalline wolves you mentioned. Did you know they mate for life? That they grieve for their dead? That the pack you destroyed had a complex social structure with elders who taught the young and artists who sang the pack's history and crystal formations? Crixtal's hands shook as he lifted the coffee cup. No, I didn't know. I didn't want to know. But now you do. Now I do. He met her eyes for the first time since entering. What happens now? Are you going to kill me? Lisa's expression softened. Crixtal, if I wanted you dead, you would be. The fact that you're sitting here asking these questions means you learned what I wanted you to learn. Which is, that mercy is not weakness. That true strength comes from choosing when to fight and when to spare. That the greatest hunters are those who know when not to hunt at all. Crixtal set down his cup and stood to leave. At the door he paused. Miss Kane, if I wanted to make amends for what I've done, how would I start? Lisa smiled, and this time there was nothing frightening about it at all. By using your skills to protect instead of destroy. By hunting only those who prey on the innocent. By remembering that every creature you face has a family, a life, a reason to live. After he left, Lisa returned to her paperwork. Outside her viewport, ships came and went from Nexus Station, carrying trade goods and passengers between the stars. Somewhere among them were vessels carrying the news of what had happened here. Stories that would spread through the galactic community like ripples in a pond. The galaxy was learning about humanity, one lesson at a time. And Lisa Kane, diplomatic attaché from Earth, went back to reviewing,